Y'all, it's been a busy last week in true crime. We've had major bombshells in the Suzanne Morphew, Gypsy Rose, and Crystal Rodgers case, and we're going to talk about them in today's video. Hello Sofa Squad and welcome back to the sofa. Sofa's back there pretending to be a sofa. Roscoe's under it pretending to be the mascot, but there's no pretending about that. We know he's the mascot. And my name is Paul. Now if you're new to the channel, well, welcome to the sofa. And if you're not, well, welcome back. Now today you saw the thumbnail, you heard my intro, you clicked the video, here we are. I'm talking jaw-dropping updates in these cases, y'all. Many of them happening on the same day, okay? I didn't know what to do. Finally, justice is on the way. It is long overdue. At least we hope justice is on the way, right? But what I'm talking about are the three specific cases that we're going to be talking about today. And those are Suzanne Morphew, Gypsy Rose, as well as Crystal Rodgers. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to examine each of those and talk about the updates in them. Now this video is not meant to be a deep dive into each case. It's just meant to specifically go over these, what I call bombshell updates with it. So that being said, that's what we'll do. We'll review it through clips, through newspaper articles, that type thing. I'll give a little bit of my opinion along the way and then most of it at the end of the video. So let's go ahead and start off with Suzanne Morphew. Now let's start with this first little clip from an article as well as a picture of Barry and Suzanne and just give a quick little, 60-second review of what the case is about so that we're all on the same page. So as you see here, it says Suzanne Morphew was reported missing from her home in Chaffee County on May 10th, 2020, which was Mother's Day after she never returned home from a bike ride, the Chaffee County Sheriff's Office said at the time. Her husband, Barry Morphew, 55, was arrested almost a year later on charges, including the first-degree M charge and tampering with physical evidence in connection with his wife's disappearance. But all those were dropped in April 2022, just days before he was set to stand trial. Now also keep in mind that Barry Morphew filed a civil rights lawsuit against the prosecutors of Chaffee County, and so that will be interesting to see how this all plays into that with these new revelations. Okay, now that was literally the little 60-second overview. There's lots of ins and outs of the case along the way, but that gives you an idea of where things were at and where they are now. Well, a huge part of this has been, where is Suzanne Morphew's body? And if you did follow this, you remember that the prosecutors were like, we feel like we're really close to finding her, but we're waiting for this area to thaw, and so on and so forth. So keep in mind also that when the charges were dismissed, it was without prejudice. They can file more charges against him. That being said, let's get into what has happened recently. So again, we'll refer to this little article on the screen. It says human remains located on September 22nd during an unrelated search in the town of Moffat in Saguache County were positively identified as Suzanne Morphew on Wednesday, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation said. Specific information about the location and the state of the remains are being withheld at this time, the agency said. Okay, so you heard it right. Her remains have been found, okay? This is major. Now, let's go and look at a couple of different things. Let's hear from, number one, a little bit of a statement that came out from authorities as well as the family's attorney. So we see here, it says, while this case has garnered attention from around the world, it has touched our community and the Sheriff's Office deeply, Chaffee County Sheriff John Spees said in a Wednesday statement. We have never stopped our investigation and will continue to follow all leads in pursuit of justice for Suzanne. He added that although locating Suzanne's remains is a critical component of this investigation and for her family, investigators are left with many more questions than answers. Now they are asking anyone with information about the case to contact 719-312-7530. Okay, now let's go ahead and look at a statement issued out from the attorney, and then we're going to talk about a couple of things. So it says they had faith that their wife and mom would walk back into their lives again. The news is heartbreaking, attorney Iris Eaton said, or told Fox Digital News in a Thursday statement. Neither the DA nor the authorities notified Mallory and Macy Morphew about the recovery of their mom. From what we know, Barry is as innocent as he was from day one, Eaton said in her statement. DA Stanley and law enforcement got it wrong. We hope the authorities will quickly admit their wrongful persecution of Barry, an innocent man, to treat the Morphews like the victims they are, and charge the person or persons responsible for Suzanne's killing. Okay, so there you go. Again, not much information has come out, at least by the time of this recording of this. Now, a couple of things do come to mind with this. And again, remember, Barry is not currently being charged with anything. He was at one point, but those were dropped. So, there's that. So, first of all, I'm curious to see what is this going to, number one, overall, are we going to see more charges come, right? What is Suzanne going to tell us from her resting spot? What is her body going to say? Now, clearly, we don't know what the remains are or the state that they're in. I imagine not well. It's been quite a bit of time has gone by. But nonetheless, let's see what her body says. What do her remains say? What story are they telling us? And does that story implicate Barry in any way, shape, or form? Does that story implicate a third party? Does that mean if it does implicate a third party that Barry may or may not have had something to do with initiating that third party? Only time and evidence will tell, right? But a lot of that is on the table now. So, another thing that goes to my mind is for the girls. At this point in time, now there is no denying that their mother is gone, right? Before it could be, well, maybe mom's been kidnapped, maybe, who knows what's gone through their mind. We do know that they have stood by their father, Barry, though. So at this point in time, it's confirmed mom is not coming home, right? Not alive, at least, which is heartbreaking regardless of whatever else is going on, right? It's that confirmation, although that might also bring some sense of like, okay, not really closure, because I don't think that these cases ever have that sense of closure. I don't see just that kind of open wound of the loss of someone that close to you. I'm not sure how one moves past that fully, if that makes sense. But again, I'm very curious for their reaction. That being said, would I have paid God amounts of money to be a fly on the wall at the Barry home when all this came about? Yeah, completely. I would very much be interested in knowing his body language, his mannerisms, how he's acted, all that. So personally, what I think is going to take place is, number one, if we look beyond the sheriff's statement of we have more questions than answers, that's very telling. I don't think they're going to get a ton of information. Again, it's so much time has gone by, and how much can you get out of that? It's going to be very difficult. So the fact that he's saying that at this point and still asking for information and this, that, and the other, now they could also be kind of acting that way to not scare Barry off, because if there is something that's like, oh, we got him, we have the evidence or whatever, then they're going to want to kind of make him feel as comfortable as possible while they gather those charges up. Again, only time will tell, and my heart goes out to her family members, because this is the whole thing's tragic, but now that you have the confirmation of, okay, we found her, she's gone, where do we go from here? So my heart breaks for them, and I hope that they're all making it through this time as best as you possibly can through a time like this. Now let's move on to that next case, and the next one is going to be Crystal Rodgers. Now let's very quickly just talk about who Crystal Rodgers is. Crystal Rodgers is a mother of 5 children, and in 2015 she went missing. Now there has been controversy surrounded by this case, and lots of loss, to be honest, surrounded by this case. Not just Crystal's loss of life, her father's, and then, like I said, lots of controversy. Much of this controversy has been centered around Brooks Hewick. That was her boyfriend at the time, the father of one of her children. And with that being said, let's just get into the nuts and bolts of this one, because again, this is one of those cases where I wasn't sure if we were ever going to see a resolution. This is a lot of the good old boy system on display here with this one. So for there to be some charges filed against Brooke, major news and the pursuit of justice for Crystal. So let's go ahead and look at a couple of articles about these updates. So first, I'm putting the actual FBI announcement up here, and it says here, in coordination with the Kentucky State Police, other local and federal law enforcement partners, FBI Louisville has been laser focused on our commitment to hold accountable those that were responsible for the disappearance of Crystal Rodgers. Today we take a significant step in making good on that promise. FBI Louisville and Kentucky State State Police have arrested Brooks Hewitt without incident on charges stemming from the Crystal Rodgers investigation. The Hewitt indictment remains sealed, and additional details will be revealed during Hewitt's arraignment in early October in the Nelson County Circuit Court. Now, I'll be very curious to hear what the affidavit and all that says with that. We'll get much more information. But let's move on to another little article that would give us more insight into what's going on. So now this next thing up here just, again, kind of reiterates what we just went over. He has been charged with the M charge, tampering with physical evidence. His bond is set at $10 million in cash. It's not clear where he's being held. And it reiterates again that early October hearing that we will see and get a little bit more information. Now, moving on to this next thing here, I wanted to include this because it kind of gives us a little overview of just how much has gone on here in the pursuit of justice for Crystal and her family. So it says multiple family members related to Hewitt have been connected with the case, WLKY reported, including his grandmother and brother. The state of Louisiana said in 2016 that it believed that his grandmother's car was used to dispose of Rodgers' body, but she refused to testify when called to court, the station reported. Within the first year of Rodgers' disappearance, Hewitt's brother was fired from the Bardstown Police Department for interfering with the investigation, WLKY reported. A friend of Hewitt also faced dozens of perjury counts early in the investigation, but pleaded guilty to lesser charges, according to WLKY. The FBI, which has been in charge of the investigation since 2020, last year, searched the farm where Rodgers was last seen alive. The farm belongs to Hewitt's family, the station reported. This is the second arrest related to Rodgers' case, WLKY reported. Earlier this month, Joseph Lawson, 32, also of Bardstown, was arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit the M charge and tampering with physical evidence. WLKY reported that the alleged crimes took place on July 3rd or 4th, 2015, when Rodgers was last seen. Lawson will also appear next in court in October. WLKY said he has pleaded not guilty and is being held on a $500,000 bond, according to WLKY. Okay, so now in this case, like I said in the beginning, I really didn't think we would see any kind of resolution to this because of all the little tentacles that are in here. You hear of this, the family owns the farm, it's an influential, wealthy family. The brothers in law enforcement, he kind of interfered with the interrogation or interview, I should say, that Brooks was under. Crystal's father was killed. That hasn't been resolved. So many backhanded kind of stuff going on with this, and it's devastating, because if you've watched the documentaries and followed it, all that her family wants is justice, right? Remember, she has 5 children that are now without a mother. One of the children was fathered by Brooks. So that being said, to see him finally charged, it's just like, oh my God, right? Now, here's the other thing that I think. So you heard them say, oh, the little friend of his got charged with conspiracy and all this. How much do you want to bet this guy's going to testify against Brooks? And that's where we're getting some of these, okay, we got him. They arrest him, and then a little bit later they come and arrest, Brooks. This sounds to me like a case that needed an eyewitness testimony, someone to flip on someone else to seal the deal. Because remember, they have not found Crystal, right? I don't know if they would at this point. Obviously, I pray they do, just to give the family that much more of a, she can rest in peace, I guess you could say. I don't know how you could really say that, though, probably with the way that she left the earth, but you know what I mean, just to get that extra bit of, we can put our baby where we want her to be properly buried, right, and not where allegedly Brooks and someone else probably left her or did with her. So, maybe that will come of this. We don't know. We'll have to continue to watch. But I'm sure this is a joyous day for Crystal's family, to be able to get these answers and to see justice. Because what this also reminds me of is very similar to the Murdoch case, where, you see the boys, how much they got away with and that type thing. And this just kind of felt like that too. A lot of privilege going on here. Him being able to kind of use the good old boy system to skeet by on things. and finally his day has come, so we will continue to follow it. And now let's get to that last one. Let's talk about Gypsy Rose. Now let's very quickly go over a few things just to get us all on the same page as to what this case is about. So Gypsy was sentenced to a time in prison, 10 years. She conspired with Nicholas Gojan to kill her mother back in 2016. Now this is a very complicated case because Gypsy essentially is a victim of her mother's. Her mother's had her convinced and treated her as if she was terminally ill, and had numerous procedures and things done to Gypsy that were completely unnecessary. I mean, medically abused this girl, emotionally, you name it. And one thing that has been, I guess you could say, interesting about this case is in the situation here of she did this, but it was almost like, well, how else was she going to get away from her mother? Her mother suffered from Munchausen's by proxy. I always mess up saying that. Now, very many documentaries and shows have been done on this case and have brought light to it over the years and whatnot. You know, her mother was getting all sorts of money and charities and all sorts of stuff in the name of Gypsy for this. And so eventually, you know, Gypsy basically called on and was like, you know, oh my God, like what's going on? And this unfolded. Well, there's been a major update. She has been paroled. Okay. Now remember, she only got 10 years. Her accomplice, Nicholas, got a life sentence, right? Now, I don't know if he'll ever be able to get it turned over because it has been denied. And so she's been paroled, so let's talk about that. We're going to be referring to an article by Daily Mail. So as you see on the screen here, this is by Emma James, a senior reporter for Daily Mail. And again, it just kind of reiterates the things I went over. Gypsy Rose Blanchard is paroled and set to be released from prison 3 years early after being jailed for murdering her Munchausen-suffering mother, who convinced her she was terminally ill. Now, let's go on to the second page of this. It says Gypsy Rose Blanchard has been granted parole after being jailed for 10 years for murdering her mother. The 32-year-old pleaded guilty to the second-degree murder charge of Claudine D.D. Blanchard in 2016, with the case garnering national attention. Claudine convinced her daughter that she was terminally ill, with Blanchard's lawyer saying she was abused by her mother as part of an elaborate fraud scheme. Missouri Department of Corrections has confirmed she will be released on December 28th after serving just 7 years. She was handed a 10-year sentence for plotting to kill her mother, while her accomplice Nicholas Gojan was given a life sentence. Now the last page here says she found love in prison, getting engaged in 2019 to a pen pal who started writing her after her story was the subject of an HBO documentary, Mommy, Dead, and Dearest, which aired in 2017. Joey King also starred as Blanchard in a Hulu miniseries called The Act, which aired in 2019. Photos of Blanchard posing with her fiance Ken and family were obtained by E! News in 2019. In one photo, Blanchard is seen holding hands with Ken alongside her father, Rod Blanchard, and her stepmother, Christy. Claudine was found stabbed to death in her bed at her home in Springfield, Missouri in June 2015. Okay, now like I said in the beginning, this case brings up a lot of different feelings for a lot of different people, right? Because, you know, first of all, you have the situation of when you see the story of what was done to Gypsy, and you're like, whoa, okay, I mean, this is severe abuse, right? Severe. Side note, if you have not watched the documentaries that I just mentioned, I'm talking you press stop on this video and go watch them immediately. They are that good. Docu-series, I should say, right? Especially The Act with Joey King. Amazing. Amazing. So anyways, so it brings up a lot of different things because a lot of people, you know, it's one of those cases where you're like, okay, you know, well, what was she going to do? It was almost like you're lashing out at your abuser to get away from them. Was it right the way she handled it? You know, but also, well, she wouldn't know any other way to do this. It just brings up all these confusing feelings, you know. So to me, I always looked at it like whatever happened to her mother, pretend that didn't even happen, they just got her away from the mother. Gypsy was going to need severe help, right? Life skills, this type thing. Now, the 10-year sentence to me, I felt was appropriate. I was like, you know what? Got it. So to me, her getting out 3 years early isn't that big of a deal because I'm like, this to me seems kind of normal, right? A lot of people will get paroled early for good time and all that type of stuff. My hope and desire for this is that Gypsy has used this time to recalibrate life, right? And to, you know, you take classes and life skills and this kind of stuff. I hope that her relationship is a good one for her. I think she does deserve happiness. I think she got a really, really bad card dealt to her, via her mother, obviously. Now, then you get into the whole complicated thing of the boyfriend getting a life sentence. And it's like, okay, what do you do? Because technically he's the one that did the murder, the whole 9 yards. It's one of those very nuanced cases where your heart just breaks. And I mean, my heart really, really does break for Gypsy, because I'm like, what are you going to do? It's like one of those cases where you hear about of the female eventually, murdering the male who is abusing her, and she gets life sentence. But it's like, how else were you going to get away from him, right? So with Gypsy being so brainwashed by her mom, it's like, what were you going to do? Now, I'm not trying to say that like, oh, well, the only answer is to, find somebody to come, stab your mom to death. I mean, obviously, right, there should be better ways to go about this. But again, it's one of those tragic cases, and it got really brought to light with these documentaries that came out, and you saw, again, some of it's, the act was not, it was a docu-series, right? It wasn't a documentary. But just to see the level of abuse, you're just like, oh my God, like, I'm honestly surprised it didn't happen earlier, right? Because what is one to do? What is one to do? So, we'll be keeping our eye out on that one. I'm curious to know what you think about each of these cases. These are major cases that have dominated the news for like the last, however long they've been going on, right? Especially Suzanne Morphew, because that's probably the most recent one, if you will, fresh and whatnot. I mean, Crystal's right there behind it, and I'm not trying to categorize one as better or whatever than the other one. I'm just kind of going in the chain of order of Suzanne, Crystal, Gypsy, as far as most recent whatnot. So I'm curious to know, do you think that Barry's going to be charged again in Suzanne's case? What do you think they're going to say about Brooks? Do you think this guy's going to testify against him as co-conspirator or whatever it was? What do you think about Gypsy? Where did you land on everything? Like, did you think it was an appropriate sentence? Do you think she should get out early? Do you think she should have spent any time in jail? That kind of a thing. I'm curious to know, so let me know down in the comment section. And also, though he is under the sofa, he does ask for sofas to be dropped in the comment section. And by he, I mean Mr. Roscoe. And until we meet down there on those sofas to talk in the comment section, well, I'll see you there.